Welcome to the Rubber Chicken Report podcast. We cover everything from clowning and magic to balloon twisting and the business behind the fun. Subscribe and check us out on YouTube at the Rubber Chicken Report. Let's jump in.
Get ready to tumble headfirst into the wonderfully chaotic world of physical comedy.
Yeah, it's quite a world. We've got a fantastic collection of sources to explore today.
We really do. We're looking at Bryce Allen Pinkham's thesis, A Fool's Journey.
Which is great. And also Joe Diefenbacher's Drama Games for Clowning and Physical Comedy.
Good one. Plus, John writes, why is that so funny? A practical exploration of physical comedy and, well, even a look at the Wikipedia entry on physical comedy for a broad view.
Our mission today, really, for you, the curious listener, is to truly get a handle on what sparks that physical laughter in us.
Yeah.
We're going, way beyond just basic slapstick. We want to investigate the history, the key figures, the principles that make it all tick. We're aiming for those aha moments, things that stick with you, but without drowning you in detail.
Exactly. So where do we even begin? I mean, why is someone slipping on a banana peel potentially hilarious?
Right. It seems so simple.
Well, we're going to start by digging into the core ideas behind comedy itself. Then we'll meet this fascinating character type, the fool.
The fool. Crucial.
Then explore some historical examples, physical comedy in action, and finally touch on how it's actually, well, made and performed. Okay, let's unpack this.
A really insightful place to begin is thinking about why comedy even exists. Eric Segal, in his book, The Death of Comedy, argues pretty compellingly that comedy is way more than just being funny.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a tradition, almost a philosophy, a whole way of looking at life that's built up over centuries.
And the word comedy itself, it has some surprisingly complicated roots, doesn't it? It's not straightforward.
Not at all. Segal lays out several really fascinating possibilities. One connects comedy to the Greek words koma.
Koma.
Meaning sleep, and oid, meaning song.
Sleep song, huh?
Yeah. The idea is that comedy, kind of like our dreams, offers an escape from the everyday rational world.
Okay, I can sort of see that. Dreams definitely don't follow logic.
Exactly. They play with time, space. Plato even talked about dreams as a state where unlawful pleasures are awakened when our reasoning minds are, switched off.
So, like in dreams where rules don't apply, ancient comedies often had characters breaking rules, acting irrationally, things getting a bit wild.
Precisely. That link between the illogic of dreams and early comedy is really suggestive. It points to a basic human need to step outside the line sometimes.
Escape the expected.
And this idea of returning to a more basic state,
Yeah.
it goes further. Bergson, writing about dreams, calls sleep the single most infantile activity we engage in.
Infantile.
Yeah, something we do from infancy that barely changes. And comedy, in a similar way, can be seen as a kind of playful step back to our most uninhibited childlike instincts.
Oh, okay.
We, the audience, get a kick out of being briefly transported to a world where the usual social and moral rules are kind of paused.
It's like permission to be silly, even laugh at things that are maybe a bit naughty.
Exactly. Then there's another theory linking comedy to the Doric tradition, that's ancient Greece, and the word kom,
Comb. Okay.
meaning country village. The idea here is maybe comedy started in folk rituals before big cities.
So a more rural, maybe primitive origin?
Possibly. From a city perspective, country life might seem simpler, freer maybe, a return to basics.
You definitely see that contrast in literature, right? Like Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream or Wilde's importance of being earnest.
Good examples. The city rules versus the country freedom allows for funny stuff to happen away from all the usual constraints.
Makes sense.
And then there's a derivation Segal himself prefers, connecting comedy to the Greek komos.
Komos.
This was the often wild wine-soaked party that usually ended Aristophanic comedies, often at night.
A big revel.
Yeah, Segal calls it a revel without a cause. A bit like, modern holiday humor.
Yeah.
Singing, dancing, maybe too much drinking, flirting.
It is striking how many old comedies end with dancing songs or even, well, hookups.
Right. It really underlines that desire to break free from everyday rules and inhibitions.
So early comedy was tied to letting loose, defying norms.
And Segal brings it all together beautifully. He suggests that while the exact origin is fuzzy, the essence of comedy involves this rule-breaking physical party, komos, and a kind of orgy in the mind.
Wow.
He wraps it up by saying comedy is maybe a dream song of a revel in the country.
Okay, so comedy's core is about challenging norms, tapping into basic instincts, enjoying some freedom, mental and physical. Now, how does the fool fit in? This figure sounds key.
The fool, yeah. As Pinkham argues in his thesis, the fool is really the embodiment of comedy, like comic theory made flesh.
So not just one specific character.
No, it's broader, a concept that pops up in different forms all through theater history. Village idiots, clever servants, clowns, jesters, mimes, even the tramp.
So when we say fool, we're not just thinking of like Feste and Twelfth Night.
Exactly. Literary fools like Feste are examples, sure. But the fool is a bigger idea, a particular kind of mind, body, spirit, playing a really important role in society and comedy.
Right.
Feste's wit is one side, but then you have the clumsy gluttony of Maccus in Roman comedy. That's another side. Both are elements of the fool.
And like comedy, the fool seems rooted in simpler rural life, and simplicity is key in mind, body, spirit.
That seems to be the core. Let's start with the mind. The fool often lacks what we call common sense.
Operates on different logic.
Yeah, seems to ignore it completely.
Yeah.
And loves humor that's maybe a bit earthy, obscene even. John Towson, in his book Clowns, says the fool blissfully operates outside the laws of logic. I think they never really bought into being a grown-up.
That childlike spirit seems central too, not just silliness, but real playfulness. Mischief, absolutely. Or joy in games, making people laugh. That inherent joy is vital for their comedy.
And vital for creativity generally, right? Playfulness.
Exactly. The fool totally embodies that energetic, mischievous child spirit. Okay, and then the body of an animal. That sounds interesting.
It refers to how the fool often seems to embody a kind of regression to a more primitive state, showing animal-like qualities. Think of the satyrs in Greek satyr plays, part goat, part man, known for drinking, sex, pranks, just general wildness.
So tapping into those base instincts we usually hide.
Precisely. Pinkham uses the example of modern sports mascots. The Philadelphia Fanatic, maybe.
Yeah.
That feathery green creature, clearly more animal than human, right?
Yeah.
And it gets this freedom to disrupt everything, act on instinct in ways a fan couldn't, by letting the fool act out these wilder desires in a contained way. Society, or the stadium crowd, keeps its own impulses in check.
So the fool gets a special license. To question authority, poke fun at sacred cows.
Exactly. And that dual nature disruptor and entertainer is crucial. They're both a scapegoat and part of the community. Society seems to recognize foolishness is just human. We all have that potential. There's that proverb, if every fool wore a crown, we should all be kings.
Right. So the fool is a safety valve. Lets us laugh at awkward stuff, confront our inhibitions indirectly. More than just laughs, they hold up a mirror.
Definitely. Now let's shift from the theory of the fool to how this actually shows up in performance. The key figure here is Arlecchino.
Harlequin, from the Italian Commedia dell'arte. This feels like a really vital historical link for physical comedy.
Totally crucial. The Commedia dell'arte, kicking off late 15th century, really shifted theater into a profession with incredibly demanding physical and mental requirements for the actors. They had to master this improvisational art, relying heavily on a very expressive language of gesture.
And the Commedia had a massive impact later on, right? On comedy, physical comedians.
Immense. It thrived for 3 centuries across Europe, even where audiences didn't speak the language.
Wow.
Through physical movement.
Yeah.
A tradition inherited partly from even earlier Etruscan stuff. These actors use broad, clear gestures, especially in comic lazzi.
Where you mentioned lazzi, those pre-planned bits.
Exactly. Little physical comedy routines. They could use them to cover mistakes or just inject energy for the crowd. So the key thing is, Arlecchino comes from this tradition of highly skilled, almost animalistic physical comedy that directly influenced everything after.
Like little bursts of vaudeville inside the play.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And beyond lazzi, each commedia character had a distinct physical presence, often a specific mask too, instantly telling you who they were.
Like Pantalone shuffling or Il Capitano swaggering.
Exactly those. You knew them by how they moved.
And Arlecchino, Harlequin, is like the ultimate fool in this tradition.
Absolutely. Pinkham calls him the single most distinctive instance of the fool in all of classical theater. He perfectly embodies that mind, body, spirit combo we talked about.
Right.
And interestingly, like comedy and the fool concept, Arlecchino doesn't have one clear origin. He just appears. But he keeps showing up in comic tradition.
Almost like he just bubbled up from the collective imagination. But being elusive, inconsistent, that kind of fits the unpredictable fool, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Because Commedia wasn't heavily written down, what we know about Arlecchino is pieced together. From plays, accounts, pictures, a few sketches.
Hard to trace his family tree.
Very.
Yeah.
But it's generally thought He came from the lower, more rural part of Bergamo, which fits the fool's country roots and maybe less refined intelligence.
So mentally, Arlecchino is that fool archetype simple.
Yeah, fundamentally naive, not thinking much beyond immediate needs.
Food, love, practical jokes.
The basics. And while he's always causing mischief, it's rarely actually mean. There are great examples, like in Rosati Returns from the Wars. His hunger proves he's not a ghost. Or in Three Cuckolds, he's just constantly moaning about lack of food, love, and chances for pranks.
And that childlike spirit, does Arlecchino have that playful innocence too?
Totally. The writer Marmontel called him a mere sketch of a man, a great child visited by flashes of reason and intelligence.
A great child, I like that.
He's incredibly changeable, easily distracted, thinks illogically.
Yeah.
Like that classic story where he pretends to be deaf and dumb, but then suddenly explains why he had to answer a question.
Huh. That's perfectly illogical fool. And the body of an animal thing for Arlecchino.
This is where it gets really good. His physicality is absolutely central. He represents that step back from being purely human, incredible agility.
Right.
Descriptions in the time compare his movements to barnyard animals, hens, ducks, even a drunk gazelle, as one writer put it.
A drunk gazelle. So it's a deliberate parody of human movement, showing that instinctual, less graceful part of us.
Exactly. We laugh, recognizing our own underlying animal nature maybe peeking through our sophistication.
Makes sense. That must have demanded a lot from the actors.
Tremendous amount. They had to be incredibly agile. Leaping, dancing, somersaults. Domenico Biancalelli, Dominique, and Evaristo Girardi, famous harlequins, known for acrobatics.
So Arlecchino set a really high bar for physical comedy. How did this evolve into more modern stuff?
Well, that highly expressive gesture language from commedia directly fed into modern pantomime. In 19th century Paris, Jean-Gaspard Deburau is seen as the father of modern mime, telling whole stories without a word. He was amazing at conveying emotion with tiny movements.
And then Marcel Marceau brought mime to the masses, right? With the clowns.
Yeah. Bip, unlike Arlecchino, who was cunning and agile, Bip isn't particularly smart or lucky.
Failure follows him around.
Often seems that way. But the audience always sympathizes, roots for him. Marceau's artistry was a huge continuation of the fool's lineage, just in a different style.
And then Charlie Chaplin, the tramp. The definitive 20th century fool, maybe.
You could definitely argue that, absolutely. Those baggy trousers, the mustache, the cane, instantly recognizable. He's a clear descendant of the theatrical fool, specifically Arlecchino. Chaplin himself described the tramp in ways that echo the comedic character.
Yeah.
Many-sided, a tramp, a gentleman, a poet, a dreamer, a lonely fellow, always hopeful.
Right.
The tramp have that childlike simplicity, the clumsy misfortune we associate with the fool, though maybe with a more poignant, melancholic edge.
Yeah, reflecting the times. World War I era.
Possibly. His huge popularity then, and his enduring status, it says a lot about the appeal of this figure.
It's amazing how the archetype adapts and still resonates. Which brings us to someone more contemporary. Bill Irwin.
Bill Irwin. For many today, he's a kind of modern Arlecchino, though he's hard to pin down.
How so?
People call him a clown, a mime, a metaphysical vaudevillian, just a physical actor. Even Irwin finds it hard to find one label.
He draws on so many influences, right? Mime, commedia, grotesque, circus clowning, street performing, postmodern dance. It's a real mix.
Exactly. His training was Key Ringling Brothers Clown College, and early work with the Pickle Family Circus. That gave him a solid grounding in physical comedy traditions. His show, in regard to flight, is a brilliant example, a compendium of clown bits that grew into a dream play about being a performer.
I read about his incredible physical control in that, like an elastic body and kinetic dilemmas.
Yes, he could move in such unexpected, expressive ways, telling stories without words. Julie Taymor said he developed a new theater with physical clowning as the language.
High praise.
And later stuff, like Full Moon, hugely successful. With all that improv audience interaction, that was groundbreaking too. Really influenced how performers think about involving the audience.
It sounds like he really understands it's not just about showing off his own amazing skills, it's about a bigger artistic vision. He got a MacArthur Genius Grant, right?
He did, which underlines that. And he's also known as a comedy historian. Very aware of the tradition he's part of, feels a responsibility to extend it. He really believes in the power of physical language.
So we've traced this amazing line, the fool, from ancient roots right up to masters like Bill Irwin. Now, let's connect this back to practical application, specifically Bryce Pinkham's thesis and his show, Lost in College. a physical comedy.
Right. Pinkham's academic research didn't just stay on the page. It directly inspired his own physical performance piece.
Lost in College.
Yeah. The concept was a series of basically silent pantomime sketches, featuring a character, a modern fool navigating familiar college situations, campus settings.
And he drew on the traditions we've discussed. Commedia all'arte, Bill Irwin's style, silent film comedy like Chaplin.
Absolutely. Pinkham played the main role, the performer, this modern fool trying to get through college life. The show had 4 main sketches:
Where were they set?
a crowded shuttle bus, a busy gym, a quiet library, a chaotic dining hall. The student character meets various campus stereotypes.
And these were mixed with other things. A lecturing professor, an accordion player.
Yeah, cleverly woven in. The professor would humorously lecture on those comedy derivations we talked about earlier.
Ah, connecting the theory.
And the accordion player did music and sound effects, often comically. It created a really engaging layered structure.
Sounds like it.
There was even an interlude called Dance of the Comos, directly linking the theory about revelry to the physical comedy on stage.
Cool.
And the final sketch got interesting, blurring the lines between the performer's own struggles making the show and the student's story. It ended with him interacting directly with an audience member. Brought it all together nicely.
Pinkham mentioned an inside-out development process, starting with the silent sketches.
Yeah, he built outwards from those. The Newton bus sketch, set on the campus shuttle, was apparently key in shaping it.
How so?
That simple scenario student on crowded bus helped him nail down clear physical storytelling and developing character through relatable everyday stuff. He learned how vital it is to stick to a simple arc, beginning, middle, end, and to really trust his comic instincts, commit fully to the character.
Right.
He tells a story about struggling with a book juggling trick, but finally nailing it by just staying completely in character. That really illustrates it.
It sounds like the whole thing, the research and the creative work, was a big growth experience for him as a scholar and an actor.
Definitely. His conclusion is pretty powerful, that comedy is fundamentally a return to a more primitive, simple, free way of being, and that the fool spirit lives in all of us.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways for you, our listener?
Well, we've explored comedy's historical roots in ancient parties, escape, then the enduring, adaptable figure of the fool popping up everywhere, and the core principles of physical comedy brought to life by greats like Arlecchino, Chaplin, Bill Irwin.
And hopefully you, our dedicated learner, have grabbed a solid understanding, quickly but thoroughly. Got some surprising facts, those aha moments, without feeling totally overloaded.
Exactly. So here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on. Think about the physical comedy you see every day. Could be a friend's clumsy gesture, could be movie slapstick. How do those moments connect to this long, fascinating tradition we've discussed?
Yeah, what does our laughter at physical comedy actually reveal about ourselves, about society?
Good question to ponder.
And if this has sparked your interest, definitely check out the sources we mentioned. They offer a much deeper dive into the art and appeal of physical comedy and its performers.
Absolutely. It's a rich area.
That's it for this episode of the Rubber Chicken Report. Hit subscribe and catch us on YouTube for more adventures. Until next time.